Well, Keith, thank you so much for joining us on Healthcare Strategies today. I hope you've been having a good time at HIMSS. It's a bit crazy, but
that's crazy is an understatement. Yeah.
Yeah. And I wanted to talk to you, well, first of all, about what is it like to be a cybersecurity expert at one of like a premier hospital like Cleveland Clinic. I mean, you must feel like you have a kind of target on your back all the time. That seems like a pretty intense job.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, first and foremost, I think it's really a privilege to be part of such a great organization that's doing so much for so many people across the world. But these are definitely challenging times from a cybersecurity standpoint. There's a number of threats, different types of adversaries that are out there. It doesn't seem to be a week that goes by that we don't hear about something, some healthcare system or service provider that's being impacted. So your comment about a target on your back is really true, but we're lucky that we have a great organization that really stands behind us and makes the investment in the people and our technology to really protect everything that we do that's technology dependent.
Yeah, and I know one of the things that you're really focusing on while you're here at HIMSS is connected devices and how Cleveland Clinic is using those and protecting them and making them secure, and how we can do that on a larger scale. I'd love to hear some of the conversation on that specific topic that you've been hearing at HIMSS, that you've been participating in. What has been the main themes of how we can make these devices a bit more secure and a bit more safe for patients and providers?
Yeah, I think that's a great point. It's a great question. It's a really big topic. There's a lot of conversation about how we're using the technology, making sure that the use is secure, that supports the clinical operations, supports the patients. But I think a lot of the conversations I've heard is how do we move the protection earlier into the process where the technology is actually being constructed, in the manufacturing facilities. How do you move the security all the way into the point of innovation and design so that you're reaching a point where it's secure by design? And how do you increase that collaboration between the manufacturers, the healthcare systems that have to use it, the physicians, the other providers that really have to use it, and bring everyone to the table so you can have a strong and meaningful conversation about achieving that connected state, but doing it in a secure way.
Yeah. I was really curious about how manufacturers play into all this, because it would seem like some amount of responsibility lies on them to make sure that their devices that they're creating and then sending out to all of these major hospitals are safe. At the same time, we know that these attacks often outpace innovation. You create something and it's already got something that someone already has figured out a way to kind of diffuse it or figure it out. So could you kind of go into that relationship between hospitals and manufacturers and innovators, and what is that conversation looking like right now? How could it be better?
So I think in the past it's been very much a service provider and a consumer of that service, and now it's a lot more a collaboration. Like I said earlier, we're really all coming together to have that conversation and partner at a different level, how we've historically been. And I think we're looking at the future of healthcare technology and where it's going so that we can build towards that future as opposed to being as reactionary as we once were. I think COVID taught the world a lot of things about you have to try and predict those unpredictable things and be able to pivot and go in those directions, where you may not be ready for.
When you talk about have those conversations with manufacturers and innovators about the future of technology, what do those conversations look like? How do you prepare for something that hasn't even been really created yet?
Yeah, I think that's a great point. It requires really embracing innovation and trying to get in that creation mindset, looking to the future. But I think it also requires us to be not so rigid in the cyber controls and the practices we put in place, so that we put in a system that is flexible and can be dynamic when all of a sudden a tissue printing device is something that we want to bring into the organization, so that we can do that without having to redesign our entire program or bring in new controls and things of that nature. So it's a combination of trying to look in the future, but also build something that can flex when there's different types of needs. And that's at the core of our program at the clinic. And I know a lot of my peers, here we've talked about that flexibility and how do we, give ourselves options now and in the future.
So what are the components of a flexible strategy? What does that look like?
So I think one of the most important components of a flexible strategy is really communication at the beginning and throughout all the different steps of bringing that strategy to become a reality, so that we get those critical inputs of who is bringing technology into our environment now, where they're seeing that technology go in the future, and what they're potentially going to be creating as well. So it's communication that's really the underpinning of a lot of collaboration. And that collaboration helps us to create something that's cross-functional, has a lot of vetting that goes into the process. So when we take an action, we're comfortable knowing that a number of people have looked at it from different perspectives and are comfortable with the approach that we're going to take.
And I did want to zoom out for just a second and look at more of the policy space on this subject matter. And I know that we've had different kind of initiatives, especially in light of the Change Healthcare attack, cyber attack. I know earlier in the year, or last year in 2023, there was the White House National Cybersecurity document that came out, and a strategy that came out. And I was curious about your thoughts on what it will take to kind of, we were talking about collaboration, but also in the policy space, what will it take to create a more aligned approach to cybersecurity and healthcare, and to really create a stronger sort of defense for these hospital systems and healthcare systems. And feel free to correct me if you think that it's already at that point. I guess the question is really just like, what does the future look like in the policy space in cybersecurity?
Well, that's a complex question.
Yeah.
I mean, first and foremost, I think multiple administrations have taken very important steps to help the industry, progress.
Mm-hmm.
We're heading in the right direction. I think it's a lot about how do we accelerate that directional movement to, really get us to the point where we need to be based on the severity of the threats that are facing us. I think it's going to be a combination of regulation, collaboration, financial assistance, and some mandates that will have to be put forward to really drive healthcare systems and their solution providers to reach the level of security that's expected. One of the challenges that there's not a single hospital system here that has enough to fund everything they need from a cybersecurity standpoint. So you have larger systems which face a large collection of threats, but they're under their own financial pressures. You have medium and small systems that are under very different financial pressures, and some of them are struggling to, stay in existence. So this is just one of countless challenges that healthcare in America is facing. And so I think it's going to require not just effort from, the private side, in the healthcare provider space, but it's going to require the federal government, other governments as well, because this isn't just a United States issue, to really step forward and help us to solve these problems through not just mandates, but guidance, funding, support, and some of the other changes that I think are necessary to really push us forward.
Yeah. Excellent. And last question here as we wrap up, what have been some of the most interesting things from HIMSS today, or from HIMSS the last couple of days? What are your main takeaways from the conference?
HIMSS is always an interesting conference. Lots to see, lots of people to talk about. I think the most interesting things, if I could sum it up, is the conversations. I've seen a lot of people having conversations outside of their silos. CIOs talking to physicians, talking to CISOs, talking to other executives. I've also, in the vendor space, they're talking about how do we do more with less, and how do we make the technology work in combination with other technologies. So kind of breaking down those silos seems to be what's naturally happening here at HIMSS, and I think it's great to see, and it's definitely what we need to see more of in the future for us to continue, serving the critical population that we do.
Great. That's really encouraging to hear.
Yep, I agree.
Well, thank you so much for coming on Healthcare Strategies, and hope to talk to you again soon.
Thank you.